The Al-Imdad Foundation has been working tirelessly to address the health, nutrition and water needs of the population. Our hospital, water deliveries and hot meal programs are made possible with your support. Your donation, big or small, is a lifeline for those in dire need. Help Gaza survive. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
It's all happening this week. Catch me, Razia Rangwich, and the team from Simplex Radio for a special live broadcast, 202 Felix Slamini Road, Overport. New showroom, fabulous deals, fresh vibes, real talk. You don't want to miss this one. Don't suffer from FOMO. Be there. Be part of the vibe. This Thursday, 10 a.m. to 12. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Al-Ansar, Durban 90.4 and Petermarisburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sacoor. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday, Radio Al-Ansar, keeping you informed.
खुदा ने मुझको दिया तेरे दुआओं से तेरी दुआओं से मिला है जो भी मिला तेरी दुआओं से तेरी दुआओं से तेरी दुआओं से जहाँ जहाँ भी गया दिल छाने लगे जहाँ जहाँ भी गया लोग दिल छाने लगे ये है तेरा मेरा माँ तेरी दुआओं से तेरी दुआओं से माँ तेरी दुआओं से माँ तेरी दुआओं से माँ की दुआ जन्नत की भाषा माँ की दुआ जन्नत की जन्नत की जन्नत की ये कामयाबियां शोहरत कदम कदम पे मिली ये कामयाबियां शोहरत कदम कदम पे मिली नसीब सा मिला माँ तेरी दुआओं से तेरी दुआओं से माँ तेरी दुआओं से माँ तेरी दुआओं से तवाफ मैंने किया सही मरवाही तवाफ मैंने किया सही मरवाही جو میں نے میرا کیا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے مجھے گرانے پہ حاسد تلے ہوئے تھے مگر مجھے گرانے پہ حاسد تلے ہوئے تھے مگر میں دشمنوں سے بچا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے قسم ہے اس میں اجاگر کا کچھ جمال نہیں قسم ہے اس میں اجاگر کا کچھ جمال نہیں عروج اس کو ملا ماں تیری دعاؤں سے تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے ماں تیری دعاؤں سے ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا ماں کی دعا جنت کی ہوا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another edition of News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba bikum. My name is Yunus and I'll be in your company for the next 2 hours, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. I'll be interviewing our guests shortly. Today, the date is the 29th of Zil Hijjah 1446 AH, equivalent to the 25th of June 2025. A pretty cold night, 18.5 degrees tonight. There's a cold front hitting the country. But Durban's 18.5 compared to Gauteng and other areas in South Africa is relatively warm. So most of the people from other parts of the province, they tend to come towards Durban in the winter months where the winters are fairly mild. But having said that, on tonight's show, we will be discussing the Iran-Israel Gaza analysis and updates. We're also going to look at the global tensions and the financial impact. And we know throughout the world that there's been a fluctuation in the markets. And indeed, in South Africa, we follow the world markets. And later on in the program, we'll have our economist with us in the studio, and we will analyze what financial impact that the global tensions have had, not only in South Africa, but throughout the world. And we do understand there was a local government service delivery summit in Durban last week sometime. And the government is looking at ways and means of reforming local government with a view to improving service delivery. And of course, this is because of elections that is just over 15 months away, 2026 elections. And a lot of ratepayer associations, councillors, civic organizations are preparing for local government elections from now. And I've stressed the point that no point in mobilizing a week or two before the elections and then the wrong parties get elected or the wrong individuals. Because the fundamental difference between local government and provincial and national government is that you elect councillors who basically represent a particular ward, and also you have PR councillors. So I've advised ratepayer associations, civic activist civic organizations to prepare now for identifying potential councillors who can become future councillors and make a difference in the municipalities and actually work on encouraging municipalities to improve service delivery. So this summit that took place was actually analyzing the kind of challenges that most municipalities face. And we've been through it for quite a while, and we're going to chat in future programs, including tonight, on exactly what are these challenges and how do we really start dealing with the challenges. Now, we very well know that the situation in Gaza is getting bad to worse, and South Africa, filed a case against Israel at the International Court of Justice in December 2023. Now, that was more than a year ago, and they marked a bold and brave assertion of international law by a global South country rooted in South Africa's own history of apartheid and its constitutional commitment to human rights. The court later found that South Africa had presented a plausible case and ordered Israel to take immediate measures to prevent acts of genocide, placing legal and moral pressure on Tel Aviv and its allies. South Africa's approach to the court resulted in intense pressure from the United States and stringent and often hysterical pro-Western lobby at home, a lobby that has frequently flouted conspiracy theories for which it can provide no evidence. For this lobby, Israel is an outpost of the White West and is therefore entitled to engage in the mass murder of civilians deemed to be part of the barbarous and not white hordes outside the West. So this particular genocide that's taking place in Palestine is an ongoing genocide. And the current war between Iran and Israel, which we chatted about last week, and in the last few days we've covered it in all media houses, there's been a lot of opinions and views on this particular war. And was it a deflection of the Gaza problem? And we know every day there's problems coming up. There's no humanitarian aid coming in. And there's a lot of implications. Now, with me live in the studio, I have Sumaya Khan. She's the chairperson for United for Palestine, an activist, education activist, unionist, and educator. She does a program called School Matters on Tuesday. And she's been actively involved in the fight against oppression throughout the world, but indeed currently in Gaza. And she's kept a close eye in the last 2 years on the happenings in Gaza. So I'd like to welcome Sumaya Khan. Sumaya, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you to having me once again in News in Focus.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you because obviously you're playing a significant role in United for Palestine, being the chairperson. And I know in a lot of protest marches you've been quite active. And also you keeping in mind that oppression is a no-no, not only here in South Africa, throughout the world, but also from a religious perspective. So I want you to explain to our listeners, as an educator, as a civic activist, being involved with unionization, fighting for the rights of workers, that now you got into an arena where you into international politics and fighting the cause of Gaza and realizing there's a role to play. What prompted you to get into an interest in the situation in Palestine? Because obviously there's been a history and, with the struggle credentials that many of us had pre-apartheid, that naturally links you up to fight oppression throughout the world whenever you hear about it and become an activist. So can you just explain to our listeners, number one, you become the chair lady of United for Palestine, but you also got an active interest in Gaza. And whenever there's a need for UFP or other organizations to get involved in activism, whether it's protest marches, whether it's going to the comrades and talking against the Israeli runners, or, attending meetings where some kind of decision is to be taken, how do we deal with this Palestinian, how do we get humanitarian aid? So if you can just run through and give our listeners a bit of an insight.
Yeah. Do you know, you asked a very interesting question, because when I wasn't an activist and when I wasn't involved in civic responsibilities, other organizations, being someone who's so involved in the union, I always wonder, what are these people going on about? They look so barbaric, protesting, and what are they doing? But then again, we were not educated what they were doing, what was their purpose, and what was their cause. And I think, for someone who sees everything black and white, you always want to do the right thing. We all are not perfect, but we always want to do what is right. And also being someone who grew up, I would say, I think I was like younger a little bit, during the apartheid era. I'll recall once we were at Addington Beach. So I have two other siblings, and they look, as you know, my grandfather were not from South Africa. They're from Afghanistan. They're Pathans. They came here during the Anglo-Boer War. How's that for you? They came here during the Anglo-Boer War as soldiers. Being a Pathan, being a warrior, standing up. I think it's like embedded in our DNA. And I remember swimming and playing in, paddling pool. And my mom and my dad said, okay, so if the police come, you act like you can't find your parents. And they did not go to my brother and my sister, because in the water, generally, Pathan people, you don't know whether they're Malay, whether they're colored, whether they're white or something. And they passed more for being colored. And me with my jet black hair, they came up to me and I said I couldn't find. And I found it so strange, because that whole harsh mentality. So that did affect me in a way, thinking why I can't swim here with all these other children. And then you saw other races. You saw black kids, further away from me. And I think that was like the very first time when it hit you. Okay, we all live together in South Africa, but we all are not given the same things. And as you grow, from primary to secondary and to high school, you discover that's apartheid. That's apartheid. We all of us are not treated the same. And sometimes the justification why different races are treated differently doesn't make sense. And when you think about it, Yunus, when you're younger, it's amazing. When you're a child, you tend to question that why doesn't stop. It continues. And me coming from a school in the area, Overport Secondary, for those who know, it was one of the first schools during apartheid which had learners who were black, African learners, because a lot of the educators from that school was SATU leadership, South African Democratic Teachers Union. So there we are during apartheid time, early high school. We have black learners, colored learners. I mean, obviously majority Indian, because it is an Indian area. So we grew up with other race groups, but the other schools did not have them. But Overport Secondary had them, because the leadership were people who were very active, and they came from Salisbury Island. When you think about it, they were activists. So due to department and being so active, involved with the union, Overport Secondary was one of the very few schools in an Indian community who had children who did not live around, because then it was, if you lived around the school, you have to go to that school. You cannot go to the neighboring school of a different race, whatever. And again, you grow, you read material, you listen to your family, your neighbors, your friends, you watch television, and that tends to grow who you are. And amazingly, sometimes us being Muslim, you realize as you go into madrasa school that everyone is the same. And the reason why we perform Hajj or we go for Umrah, we all wear the ihram, the same, to tell us that we all are the same. But then you ask, but we're not treated the same. We do different things. And I went to University of Durban Westville, UDW, overwhelming in the beginning, because as you know, UDW has a history of a university where the learners have always been, regardless of which era they were, they've always been very involved in activism. And I remember my very first year there was a massive protest where they wanted learners of different color to come in. And it was a lot of Indian lecturers, Sash Cooper, Judge Zakaria, the blind judge, and many others who were so involved. And this kind of scared me. It intrigued me at the same time. And then you realize, okay, I'm a female, a Muslim female. We must behave a certain way, act a certain way. But you're curious. You want to know what's happening on. And I mean, So, and then I got involved at university. And then when I started my teaching career, afterwards when I joined the government, you get exposed to different unions, and you discovered that, as you know, I held positions in South African Democratic Teachers Union, and that's how I got involved and I started. But there's something which everyone has in common, whether you are a human rights activist, whether you are an animal activist, whether you are any activist belonging to anything, we all have one thing in common, and that is for justice, humanity, and everything should be equal, democratic, And in the underlining and behind the scenes, we are outcome of apartheid. And this is what a lot of our youth do not understand currently. They tend to complain that we're struggling, things are hard, things are tough, but they really don't know what is it to struggle, to be there. When you think about your parents, your grandparents, what they went. Our tech is sitting here. If you probably think about it, parents, grandparents carried a dompas back in the day. And, you had to be home at a different time. And so that all of us united everyone to become an activist. And in my journey, I would say, as you know, then I became an education activist. Knowing that the education curriculum kept on changing, we had OBE, RNCS, we have CAPS now. So it kept on changing to accommodate everyone. And you asked the question, how did I get involved with Palestine and Gaza? Well, throughout our life, we know have always been civil wars and wars with the neighboring countries around there. But this last, I think, 2 or 3 years is knowing that there's a place on the world, on the globe, where nobody cares and nobody worries. Is it political? What is it? A genocide? What is it? And some of us have this fear where we do not want to get involved because there's nothing we can do. We end up just talking political jargon on our phones. We when we meet friends and families, we want to show how much more we know of what's happening in Iran, what's happening in Iraq, what's happening in Saudi, UAE. But what are we doing to make a change? And then I know your guest, I mentioned this. I've met at one of our marches, I bumped into other activists from the community and around the area. And then you discover you have other leaders like Brother Abdul Velodia, who's been involved in UFP, United for Palestine, for almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. And he tended to kind of unite people who have the same vision, the same mission, the same cause, the same outcome and the same goal. Let's unite and take and move this forward. And when you think about it, not only in a community of Overport or KZN, but when you think about it nationally, South Africa, this happened in every other community, every other province. And this is how it was possible for us to be the mover for ICJ. Look at how just one activist uniting everybody together. And then you realize I'm not the only one. I'm not afraid to go on that street, scream out and say, free Palestine, because there's everybody else. There's a whole lot of other activists and protesters.
Tell me, Sumaya, from an Islamic perspective, obviously being a Muslim woman and realizing that I got to look back and say, what does the religion demand of me as an individual? Perhaps you can just give us some insight into...
When you look at that, well, 2015, I had National Union do an article on me. And there was a lady, it was, with the union, we are normally same as the ruling party, where we re-elect members, sites, regional leaders, provincial leaders. It was a Friday Jummah. I was wearing a teal trilobal cloak and I had a scarf on. And we had to go to a very popular school with staff close to 70. And we had to re-elect members. And this school was mixed race. Now, there you see this Muslim lady, I was very younger then, like, what is she coming here? How is she going to do this elections? What is her mandate? And by the way, she's a Muslim, so obviously she's weak. And there was another lady, Namusa. She's actually the national spokesperson for South African Democratic Teachers Union. She was sitting there because she needed to find out what's going, because there were political issues and challenges and racial challenges at the school. And there, our leadership introduced me and I started speaking. And I was young. I was still learning from other leaders. And she was like kind of shocked because she already stereotyped that all Muslim women sit at home, they cook, they clean, and they worship their husbands. And that's what she told me. And you're wearing a scarf and a cloak, and wow, you stood up, you spoke, you used South African apartheid terminologies, and everyone listened to you, and everyone addressed you as a leader. And she started writing an article of me, and in that article, she wrote there that when you think about people holding political positions, people holding leadership positions, people standing for justice, humanity, for things to be democratic, you'll never, ever find a Muslim young woman to be involved. And meeting me, that kind of, set the standards, okay, that's different. And when she chatted, I was on the bottom rung. I was I was branch at that moment. And she mentioned that after she had met me without introducing herself, her whole mindset has shifted how she sees a South African Muslim woman. And while chatting to me, I told her, my name, when I was quite little, lots of people meet me and they'll ask me, what's your name? I'll say, my name is Sumaya. And I know they'll tell me, oh, your name is named after the first Muslim woman to be martyred in Islam, who stood up for the correct. And I told her that story and we started chatting. And then you realize, hey, you know what, guys, let's step back and tell ourselves we're Muslim. Our religion, Islam, teaches us to be involved. If you look at all the prophets, especially a Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, and his wives, how active were they? How much have they done? Not only in spreading Islam, but also when it came to communities, when it came to people protesting against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, and every other negative thing which has happened then. They have safeguarded, they have traveled, they have protested, they have, just like how when you look at it, we had people who were standing for the truth during apartheid time, who hid in houses, who ran away, who no one knew where they were, just to come out of that terrible situation. Same did all the Prophet ﷺ's wife and all the women in Islam who held leadership positions. And it is so important for us as Muslim women to create the future, because we are mothers. How important are mothers? Let's be realistic. Regardless whether you're a teacher, doctor, lawyer, whoever, a woman still runs a household. You still got to go home. You still got to cook. You still got to clean. You still got to see to your family, your husband, your children. You still see to the upliftment of that, to the morals, to the values, obviously with the assistance of your spouse. But again, Muslim women play such an important role in the ummah. It starts from your home to your neighbor, to your street, out into the streets and into the nation, because we can make change, because it starts at the lap, as they say, on your lap, just being a woman.
Okay, I think Sumaya has just given us a background why she conscientized herself to get involved in the struggle to free Palestine, and she equated, the Muslim women of the time of the Sahaba Ikram, the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when there were battles that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to get the men folk to attend to, the Battle of Badr, the Battle of Yarmouk, to defend Islam. The women folk used to prepare their husbands, the Sahaba Ikram, to go and battle, and those men that didn't go, they were like kind of classed as sissies, because they knew the importance of martyrdom as well as the women folk that prepared the men folk.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break, and inshallah after the break we're going to actually give an update on the situation in Gaza, how that particular genocide is being deflected, because the Iran-Israel war has come in between, and there are some serious implications in that war. So we'll unpack that, inshallah, after the short break.
We'd love to meet you. Pay us a visit. Radio Al Ansar.
It's celebration time at Simplex Radio. We're turning 66, and we're doing it in style with the grand opening of our newly extended showroom. Get ready for exciting discounts off a selected range of the biggest brands in home appliances, car radios, TVs, and home theater systems. But only for 10 days. Let our expert team help you create the home of your dreams. Open Sunday, June 29th. Don't miss out. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust. T's and C's apply.
Hey South Africa, get ready for a powerful night of insight and inspiration as Educator proudly presents the Sami Hamdi South African Tour, Ummah in Motion, the journey to collective strength. You've seen him on digital platforms, now experience him live on stage. Durban, 27th June at NMJ Islamic Center. Cape Town, 28th June at the CTICC. And Johannesburg, 29th June at Kurtuba Convention Center. Don't miss this chance to hear one of the world's most dynamic political analysts up close and personal. Seats are limited. Book now and quick it and be part of the conversation that matters. The Ummah is in motion. Are you?
Explore the world with Worldview Travel. Let our expert team guide you in creating a travel experience that exceeds your expectations. Unbeatable flight deals, corporate and leisure bookings, luxurious accommodations, tailor-made packages, reliable car rentals, comprehensive travel insurance, seamless visa assistance. Visit us at 55 Problem Keys Road, Durban. Call 031-001-7062 or 0718350216. Follow us on Instagram at Worldview Travel. Worldview Travel creates memories to last a lifetime.
Ladies, you've been waiting for this Sip and Paint event. Join us for a creative afternoon of sipping and painting. Saturday, July 19th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. 207 West Road, Conference Hall.
Unleash your inner artist, relax and enjoy good company. All materials provided for just 300 Rand.
Let's get creative and make some unforgettable memories. Call Hajra now on 075-082-4327.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Kenfield Auto.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار.
I won't start.
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes.
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service.
Kenfield Auto. Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031-207-2399. Kenfield Auto.
اللهم إنك ترى ما نزل بنا في غزة من الأحوال يا ذا الجلال والعزة يا ذا الجبروت والعزة. اللهم أعز أهل غزة، اللهم فرج عن أهل غزة، اللهم فرح أهل غزة، اللهم انصر أهل غزة، اللهم داو جريحهم، اللهم اشف مريضهم، اللهم اقبل شهيدهم، اللهم ارحم ميتهم، اللهم كفف جراحاتهم وبرد آلامهم، اللهم واجعل لهم وللمسلمين فرجا قريبا يا الله. اللهم فرج عنا وعن المسلمين في كل مكان. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين واخذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداء الدين يا رب العالمين. سبحانك سبحانك ترى الظالمين فتمهلهم حتى يظنوا أنك تهملهم وتبتلي الصالحين في الدنيا حتى يستيئسوا فإن استيئسوا أيسوا أتيتهم بنصرهم. اللهم إنك تعلم أن جراحات المسلمين كثيرة وآلامهم كثيرة في كل مكان وفي كل زمان. اللهم فانصرنا على أعدائنا يا الله. اللهم فثبت أقدامنا يا الله.
Radio Al Ansar, Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM.
Ya Rasulallah, Ya Habiballah, Aka, 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 Aka. پھر کے گلی گلی تباہ ہو کر سب کی کھائے کیوں دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں رخصت قافلہ کشان غش سے ہمیں اٹھائے کیوں رخصت سے قافلہ کشان غش سے ہمیں اٹھائے کیوں سوتے ہیں ان کے سائے میں سوتے ہیں ان کے سائے میں کوئی ہمیں جگائے کیوں پھر کے دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں یاد حضور کی قسم غفلت عیش ہے ستم یاد حضور کی قسم غفلت عیش ہے ستم خوب ہے قید غم میں غم خوب ہے قید غم میں غم کوئی ہمیں چھڑائے کیوں وہ جو نہ تھے تو کچھ نہ تھا وہ جو نہ ہو تو کچھ نہ ہو وہ جو نہ تھے تو کچھ نہ تھا وہ جو نہ ہو تو کچھ نہ ہو جان ہے وہ جہان کی جان ہے وہ جہان کی جان ہے تو جہان غیر آقا کی کھائے کیوں دل کو جو عقل دے
خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں ہاتھ جان گئے عشق مصطفیٰ روز فزوں کرے خدا جانے ہے عشق مصطفیٰ روز فزوں کرے خدا جس کو درد کا مزہ جس کو درد کا مزہ سانسے دوا اٹھائے کیوں پھر کے دل کو جو عقل دے خدا تیری گلی سے جائے کیوں ہے تو رضا نرا ستم جرم پہ گئے لجائے ہم ہے تو رضا نرا ستم جرم پہ گئے لجائے ہم کوئی بجائے سوز غم کوئی بجائے سوز غم سازے طرب بجائے کیوں یا رسول اللہ یا حبیب اللہ یا رسول اللہ یا حبیب اللہ.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. A beautiful nasheed expressing the outstanding qualities of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is reported by ulama ikram and in the Quran, indeed, the world would not have been created had it not been for Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. And we know that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam fought many illustrious battles, and he taught the ummah how to undertake, battles. Sahaba ikram learned a lot from him. And the crux of his management of battles was that take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. Don't forego your ibadat in remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why they were successful in many a battle. He was a classic example of an outstanding human being. And if we emulate his sunnats, we definitely will be on the right path. Before the break, we were chatting to Sumaya, who gave us some background on what type of activism leads you into understanding the importance of getting involved in fighting oppression. And in particular, a classic example of serious oppression is the genocide that's taking place in Palestine, particularly in Gaza, more so in the last 18 months. And we know the Nakba has been taking place from the 1940s. So the battle for liberation of Palestine has been an ongoing subject worldwide. And even our former president, our first black president in South Africa, Nelson Mandela, clearly said that South Africa will not be free until Palestine is free. And we know our ulama ikram always tell us, look at the situation in Palestine and compare ourselves with that in South Africa. Even the pre-apartheid era, it was nowhere near the atrocities that the people are going through in Palestine. And Sumaya, amazingly, you mentioned about the outstanding qualities of the women at the time of the Sahaba Ikram and how they sacrificed. So perhaps, you can just give us an update. I know we got about 10 minutes left, and you're going to interview the chairperson of SAMNET, Dr. Faisal Suliman, who's quite au fait with the situation, and he's going to give us his impression of the situation in Palestine vis-a-vis what's happening in the Iran-Israel war. But the current situation in Palestine and the difficulties our people are going through, the lives that are being lost. Perhaps you just want to give us an impression of that, and the genocide is continuing while the Israel-Iran war was taking place.
When you think about it, how many of us have kind of forgotten a little bit of Gaza with Iran and the USA, and we're tending to follow that news. But the question is, have everything shifted from Gaza? Because we're following Iran, the USA, what's going on, Israel. But we have forgotten, is it, one will think, is it orchestrated politically for us to forget about Gaza? And, when you do your research into many political analysis, they tell you, we're forgetting about Gaza. Imagine us, before I talk about the situation currently, us with no lights and water during load shedding. Load shedding, how many households are gone crazy? We can't wait. We end up fighting, arguing. We just can't function with technology, without technology not being there. No water shortages. Taps are closed, pipes are burst. No one is fixing that burst sewer down our street, and we are going crazy. We are looking for places to shift. What can we do? But then, when you sit down and think, you make shukr for what you have, because the situation in Gaza is, something else. It is basically a man-made drought, a man-made famine, a man-made disaster, a man-made who is contributing to everything that which a human being cannot live, cannot exist. Right now, when you think about it, 38% of healthcare services are partially working. Most of them are not even non-existent. And 84% facilities are damaged. Infrastructure is just totally destroyed. There's no access. And that is something what we need, because generally if there's an accident, if there's an airstrike, if there's something, an explosion, immediately we want to take the person to the hospital. But unfortunately, it doesn't exist, And we spoke about water consumption. Well, water is practically undrinkable. And when you think about it, there's sewage in the water, there's stagnant water. There is a water shortage. I wouldn't say shortage. Basically, water is hardly existent. It doesn't exist, And when you think about the shelters, they are bursting. They are overcrowded. A shelter which accommodates just say 100, probably got 400 or 380. Now, imagine when we look at our kennel, our dog's kennel, with those pups, we feel it's overcrowded. Now, imagine how many of people, the living conditions are terrible. Our poor brothers and sisters are just existing, every day as it comes in Gaza. And we spoke about the massive, infrastructure damage and dire humanitarian collapse. When you think about it, there is nothing. There's nothing. On my previous show, which I did, the Global March to Gaza, I had Dr. Siam's wife, Aisha Siam. She told us a story that happened the day before she came on that show. I think it was on Monday evening. Her nephew went to get food, almost died, risked his life, and almost more than half a day later, he comes home alive, exhausted and really, really tired, and his family was just so glad to see him. And when he opens that box, which I think the UN gives, the agencies don't even want to go out. Every single thing in that box, the flour, all was rotten. But she told me they still cooked it, they still ate it, because they have nothing else. How are they going to survive? And I think we, as Muslims, as human beings, we tend to take so much for granted. Those who are listening to us, just sit back and think how many times we cook food and the leftovers in the pot or the rice stuck in the burnt rice or whatever. What do? We throw it away. But that is food. But what our brothers and sisters have is not even food. You see videos, reels of children or even of adults, women, boiling and cooking grass. And now there's not even grass left anymore. There's nothing there. And the aid flow is so limited. Agencies, again, do not want to go. And it's human nature. One tends to fear their life. Are we going to come back home to our families? And environmental contamination on the ground is the worst. And I think when we think about it, was it last year, Eid? Families still sat there on their home, in that flat, in that apartment with the walls all damaged. But with the table, they decorated it and they did the iftars, the series, and the Eid, if you recall. And that was overwhelming. But they still had some kind of structures. Now there's nothing. And it's absolutely devastating. It's inhumane. Sometimes you sit and you think, why is no one helping? And, when you talk to people who are so, at these protests we go for, at these marches, we have brothers and sisters who are so overwhelmed. They start crying when they are thinking of the brothers and sisters in Gaza, our babies. We're not talking about those who have passed on, those who have died, but the ones who are still existing, where you just see skeletons. You see a child who the whole families are wiped out. You see a mother, a granny who lost all her children, all her grandchildren, her spouse, and it's just her alone. But you don't even know where they get this strength, courage, faith, hope to still be so passionate in salah, in prayer, in hope, and, being so grateful. And when you see them being interviewed, how many of them start off the conversation? If you ask us, how is our day? We start complaining and then we'll start talking, or we'll complain about something. But they start off saying, Alhamdulillah. That faith is ever so great. And that is something, we worry that they're suffering and they look at us, no, we are suffering because we have lost our faith, but they haven't.
The resilience that you're talking about shown by those that are living in abject poverty in Gaza with everything lost.
Poverty is putting it mild. You're still getting some scraps, but this is like a famine.
And the circumstances under which they're surviving is all that they have, that we're looking forward to the akhirat, because those that died as martyrs are in the higher stages in Jannah. And those that passed away, those that they left behind are saying, we look forward to meeting them in the high state in Jannah. Like the Sahaba Ikram, their wives were telling them that you got an opportunity to get martyred to be in high stage in Jannah during the battles.
Yeah.
They are facing that in Palestine. And from an Islamic perspective, I know we're into our news break now, and we're going to, explore that a little bit further. I know you have a guest, Dr. Faisal Suliman, which you'll chat after the news break, to find out what can we as Muslims do. And, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam is reported to have said that when we see oppression, when we know there's injustices taking place, is one of the things we can do, depending on the level of our iman, to what level are in the recommendations made by Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. And there's an ayat in the Quran that talks about a pain in the body. If you feel a pain in the body, the entire body is uncomfortable, whether it's a cardiac problem, whether it's a pulmonary problem, whether it's a problem with your, legs or your knees. The whole body feels uncomfortable, and you feel the pain throughout the body, and you've got to deal with that particular problem. So inshallah, we'll unpack how do we deal with the situation in Gaza, and what are the implications of the Iran-Israel war relative to Gaza, because billions of dollars have been spent in missiles that have been blasted on all sides. Iran blasting so many missiles in Israel. Couldn't that have been used to provide aid and actually deal with with Israel in allowing the humanitarian aid to go into Gaza. So inshallah, after the news break, we'll explore those issues and have a chat about it. We'll go for the news break and we'll continue after the news break, inshallah.
Visit the Al-Ansar shop for a wide range of gift options for ladies, men, and kids. Make this Ashura special by spoiling your loved ones with our unique and thoughtful gifts, perfect for sharing the joy and spirit of the day. Al-Ansar shop, your one-stop destination for Ashura gifting.
Timeless investment. Every day, thousands trust Issa Bullion to buy, store, and sell them effortlessly. With 16 years of global expertise, we make gold trading simple. Trade 24/5 from anywhere on our user-friendly platform, first for South Africa. Each Krugerrand is fully insured and stored in high-security vaults. Enjoy competitive pricing and guaranteed buyback. Issa Bullion, built on trust, driven by expertise, focused on your future. Visit isabullion.co.za today.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al-Ansar News.
Breaking news this hour, the 25th of June, the news from Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM. Jozini municipal staff not paid due to crisis, America Monitor. The Jozini local municipality has confirmed that municipal workers will not be paid on time this month. The Northern KwaZulu-Natal municipality blames cash flow problems and 17 million rands in unpaid government debt. It says the financial crisis began in November last year and has taken a turn for the worse despite the use of an overdraft facility. The non-payment of salaries has led the EFF in KwaZulu-Natal to call on the Auditor General to launch a forensic audit of the municipality's finances. Party's Chris Msibi, who says they have notified staff, says long-term mismanagement is to blame for the crisis. More News Parliament has been requested to act swiftly to deal with the worsening condition of the World Heritage Site in KwaZulu-Natal. Action Essays Athol Trollip says neglect has resulted in ecological devastation at East Mangaliso Wetland Park in St. Lucia. Trollip says more needs to be done to prevent further damage. He had been speaking yesterday during a joint briefing with the portfolio committees on agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and the environment. He said it is worrying that the wetland can only sustain a limited number of species. He added that it is a World Heritage Site and it is used to sustain more than 98 species of different fish, and now there are only 2 species of fish left. More news now. Convener of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, Jeff Kadebe, says the Mbatha Teller Bank will no longer be liquidated. Kadebe says the collective leadership of the ANC have engaged directly with the Minister of Finance.
The Minister of Finance was going to be issuing a guarantee for those depositors who have deposited monies below 100,000 rand. Now this decision that saves Ital is that all depositors, regardless of the amount put there, are going to be saved. In other words, liquidation is off the table as we speak. The second question that you are raising, those are the next steps that now need to be taken, the practical steps that Itala needs to undertake, for an example, to increase and fortify governance and internal controls, ensuring that there's a turnaround strategy, and also looking for strategic partners in order to ensure that Itala is compliant with all banking and other regulatory requirements in terms of the Reserve Bank and the Prudential Authority.
2 suspects accused of stealing copper cables belonging to eThekwini municipality appears at Pinetown Magistrate Court today. The 2 were arrested in Malvern earlier in the week while traveling in a truck carrying the stolen property. Authorities say the recovered cables are worth over 800,000 rands. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Carmen Ryan says the duo or accused persons face several charges, including tampering with economic infrastructure. Additional charges of receiving stolen property and possessing burnt copper cables were also added. 861 kilograms of suspected stolen copper were recovered with a total value of 850,000 rands, 288 kilograms of which belong to the eThekwini municipality. The estimated value of the property belonging to Teguini Metro Electricity was 306,000 rands. In an international story, President Masoud Pezeshkian says the United States of America and the Israeli regime are bent on sowing division among Muslim countries in contrast to Iran's efforts to promote regional unity. Pezeshkian made the remarks during a phone call with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman yesterday. The remarks pertain to Washington and Tel Aviv's attempt at preventing regional cooperation on shared interest, such as support for Palestinian rights, regional stability, and freedom from foreign intervention. The phone call came after a 12-day Israeli war on aggression against the Islamic Republic backed by the US, resulting in the martyrdom of over 600 Iranians, including senior military commanders, nuclear scientists, and ordinary citizens. Pezeshkian says that Tehran would continue to assert its rightful entitlement in any diplomatic process that could concern the matter. Your financial indicators ran to the dollar 17 rands 79. The euro is 20 rands 64, and the British pound is 24 rands 20 cents. Your weather now 29 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story: the Jozini local municipality has confirmed that municipal workers will not be paid on time this month. The Northern KwaZulu-Natal municipality blames cash flow issues and 70 million rands in unpaid government debts. That's the news.
Radio Al Ansar, Durban, 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg, 105.6 FM. Allah, 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 Allah.
तन्हा हूँ मैं और इम्तिहान लाखों तने हैं सामने बैठा हूँ मैं मायूस कुन आए ना कोई मुझे थामने अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير मायूब हूँ तेरा करम पर्दा रखा इज्जत भी दी बढ़ के दिया औकात से दौलत भी ताकत भी और वक्त भी कर दे खता हर माफ तू फहरिस्त इसियां को छोड़ दे अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير रंगीनियों खुद गर्जियों में है गुजारी ये उम्र है आरज़ू बस कि यही कर दूं तेरे नाम शामो सहर तस्कीन दिल हासिल करूं रुख अपनी जाने तू मोड़ दे अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير लब पे रहे जिक्रो दुआ और तुझसे मैं डरता रहूं करके अमल कुरान पे जन्नत की राहों पे चलता रहूं खिदमत करूं इस्लाम की पछतावे का गम तोड़ दे अल्लाह अल्लाह तू मेरी सुन ले सदा حسبنا ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير रोता रहा सजदों में जो
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency 90.4 in Durban, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. My name is Yunus and we're back on live on Radio Al-Ansar International. Before the news break, we were chatting with Sumaya Khan, and she was giving us a bit of a rundown on the Palestinian issue and how important is it for us to sensitize ourselves, get involved in assisting the people, and ensuring that, you know, on our side, whatever we can do, we must render help in whichever way and form. We cannot physically go on the ground. We know some, individuals went out to Egypt and they were returned back because the Egyptian government wouldn't allow them in. So we were chatting about Iran, Israel, the Gaza analysis and updates, but we're fortunate to have live with us, or at least live on air, Dr. Faisal Suliman. He's the chairperson of SAMNET, and I will get Sumaya to interview Faisal just to chat about the Iran, Israel, Gaza analysis and updates. Faisal, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for having me.
Faisal, I'm sure you were enjoying that Nasheed, Hasbunallah wa Ni'mal Wakeel, very, very powerful Nasheed. But I've got Sumaya Khan live in the studio, and she's in a good mood to chat about the Iran, Israel, Gaza analysis and updates. And before the news break, she mentioned that billions of dollars were spent firing missiles between Israel and Iran. And on the one side, people in Gaza, the genocide is continuing and more lives are lost. Atrocities are taking place. And how do we react to this? Sumaya, can you go ahead?
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Dr. Faisal Suliman, how are you doing?
Wa alaikum salam, Sumaya. Alhamdulillah, thank you and so much for having us.
Jazakallah for linking up with us this evening. From your analysis, as you're aware, when we're looking into global tension, the current situation involving Gaza, Palestine, Iran, and the USA, and the broader regional instability, is significantly impacting global politics and contributing to the rising global tension, in multiple ways. When we look at the Israel war, Iran's role, Western nations, versus Africa, United Nation paralysis, mass movements, the social divisions, legal implications, and tensions in human rights institutions, even the Red Sea crisis, if one tends to look at it, oil prices, the list just goes on and on. So what would you say is currently going on with global tension, with all that's going on with Gaza, with Iran, with the USA?
Sumaya, I suppose it depends on how far back we want to go, but we can start right at the Crusades, and to many people, the Crusades is still carrying on, just in a different form and called different names. So you have the Crusades, and then the imperialists from the Western colonial powers, the 4 or 5 that colonized Africa, South America, and the Middle East. The agreements post World War II that carved up a lot of the Middle East, created what today we refer to as the nation states. There was no nation state. And then you look at the map, you can see someone took a pen and, drew the rectangles, etc., into especially Northern Africa and the Middle East. Then it goes to the purpose that Israel served. The first myth is that, the post-Nazi Holocaust, that Jews needed a refuge. That was, in fact, Norman Finkelstein and others have written very Jewish people themselves, children of Holocaust survivors, about manufacturing consent and how the Zionist movement even worked with the Nazis. How the Zionist movement even bombed their own people in Iraq, Jews, and other places, and drove fear into them, under false flag operations to drive them to Israel, and this concept of a homeland for the Jews. And it served a dual purpose. One of the, obviously, it's obvious, but it's still important to remind people, is that the world, notwithstanding solar and wind energy and renewable energies, still 80% of the world runs on oil. And cheap oil, there's oil in Siberia, there's oil in Antarctica, in the Arctic, in Greenland, but the cost of producing it is like 3 and 4 times of what it is to produce or to get it out of the earth in the Middle East. So, and of course now, like Qatar, places like Qatar with LPG, gas, etc. But so geostrategically, you needed an external force in the middle of all of these Arab countries. The Ottoman Empire, as we know, was dismantled. And now you had this foreign presence backed by the West to ensure that you do not get another Muslim unity. And then secondly, it's a source of having to control the Middle East because of the fact that the oil is still largely needed by the world and at a cheap price. And the person who controls oil has a huge say in the world economy. And the petrodollar, as people know, Kissinger's greatest miracle was convincing the Saudis to trade oil only in dollars and to virtually fix their currency to the dollar. So depending, like I said, how far back you go and you bring that forward, Middle East is strategic to or control of the Middle East is strategic to the West from an economic perspective, from the continuation of the Crusades, ensuring that Islam never raises its head again and is not a unified caliphate or an ummah. It's just as important to fundamentalist Christians and that. And finally, the concept that, the Christian concept that the Antichrist will only come when Jews control that whole area. And this is the Christian Zionism angle. Mm. And so the religious use or justification for what you spoke about, and that is the absolute massacring and genocide, not only of Gaza, but since 1948, since the creation of Israel. So all of that combined leaves us with this area that is strategic to China, to Russia, and of course to the whole of the West, represented by the United States in the main. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it can never be allowed to to govern itself, govern by the will of the people, govern according to Islamic Sharia or what is good for Muslims or the country. And therefore, you'll always have this. I mean, the ceasefire is not a ceasefire. It is just a pause for Israel to rearm, regroup, reorganize itself. Israel was in the ascendancy and they didn't have the supersonic ballistic missiles hitting them. You can be sure there'd be no ceasefire. Fortunately, somewhere along the line, the Americans said, for now. And I think we must never forget this. Whether it is Trump or the next president of the United States, they come and go. It's like, if I use the simple example, the ministers in our country may come and go, but the DGs, the DGGs, the whole organization of departments are still there, and their agendas more or less still go. And, what goes on under the scene, even if a minister may say one thing, but the DGs and the DGGs, etc., run the departments. And the same thing here, the hawks, the neocons, whatever you want to call them, in the State Department, in the defense, in the all of the strategic spy agencies, etc., NSA, CIA, all of the are still there, notwithstanding who comes into the White House. And therefore, the greater plan for the greater Israel, the dominance of the West over the Middle East, is going to continue. And therefore, at no stage should we be happy to say, okay, maybe Trump has seen the light, or the next president, or whatever, or even Netanyahu, when this is over, goes to jail as he should, internally or internationally. The next next Zionist prime minister or any of the cabinet is going to be any better. They're just going to wanting to do the same using different methods. So I think that is core to remembering where we are and where the future holds.
Yeah.
And as far as proxy wars go, it's highly complicated at the moment. Clearly, we all know that literally the West is in a proxy war with Russia to weaken Russia. If you can weaken Russia, the next step is China. But there's a huge proxy war going on, and the Ukrainians are paying the price for it. And at the moment, what one we want to see is Iran turned into a proxy war for Russia and America, where Russia, increases its supply of weapons, and the test ground becomes Iran.
Yeah.
And the final one, what is going on now has proven one thing. Then, as much as, and I personally, and I think Islamically, nuclear weapons should not be allowed anywhere because of the very nature of their indiscriminate mass and long-lasting devastation and effects, as we all know from what also happened in Japan, depleted uranium in Iraq. That it seems now your only protection from having round 2 and 3 of what is happening now is going to be nuclear weapons. I imagine North Korea would have been invaded, destabilized, etc. a long time ago had it not had nuclear weapons. And I think this is now driving the world to say your only safeguard is going to be wanting to get nuclear weapons. So there's that fear that, like the Kim Jong-il fear, that you can't attack this man. He's a madman who may he's got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's one of the reasons maybe Iran hasn't founded Israel even more, because the threat of using that, notwithstanding that I think the other countries in the world wouldn't have allowed it, desperate people, and Netanyahu is as bad as they come, had the potential to use a low-grade nuclear weapon in Iranian oil fields or something like that.
Yeah. Western nations versus global South, that's looking at Africa. The US and some European allies continue to back Israel, and diplomatically and militarily, leading to severe criticism from many countries in global South, as in Africa, including South Africa, and Indonesia. How South Africa's stance on Gaza affects it globally and nationally?
Look, nationally, make no mistake, the government and President Ramaphosa are under severe pressure. Internally, from the Zionist business community, from the Jewish board, the Zionist Federation, Friends of Israel, and a whole host of others. Internationally, you can be sure the CIA or the embassies via their, intelligence officers, etc., cultural officers, whatever you want to call them, are sitting at DERCO, at our state security apparatus. One talking about ISIS in South Africa, Al-Qaeda. I remember there was all of those things, Al-Qaeda camps in South Africa around the World Cup time, etc., etc. To convince our government to fall in line with the sort of foreign policy that the West would like us to have. South Africa has treaded very carefully, partly because being a member of BRICS, one of the founding members, having our huge trading partner with the United States, and access to our market, had to tread this very carefully, notwithstanding, and here, no matter what the other failings of the ANC may be, and there are many, as far as foreign affairs, as far as our policies have been concerned, they have been superb. Clearly, they could have been better. Even now, it would be great to see all exports of coal to Israel stop, the closure of the Israeli embassy, etc., etc. But given geopolitics and the sort of economic power that the Jewish lobby in South Africa holds, and how beholden many of the political parties are to this lobby. Even going to the ICJ as the only country in the world to do that, and to speak out at the United Nations, the regular, statements from Durko, Ronald Motala, our president, condemning Israel, are not easy to make in the sort of global world that we live in. And yet, we see our country as one of the foremost countries speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
So it will affect, and make no mistake, Sumaya, even now, whether it's, anyone who wants to see some of this, you have to look at the podcast called Biz News, which is like the DA Jewish mouthpiece, business under the guise of business, Rob Hershoff's statements, his podcasts, etc. You will see they are openly plotting. They're not even hiding it. The downfall of the ANC because of the support for the ICJ case, etc. And then, of course, we know even AGOA was put on the table, Ibrahim Rasool's expulsion. No matter what else they say, had in no small way been due to the fact that, we went to the ICJ, etc.
Yeah. As a human rights activist, as chair of South African Muslim Network, SAMNET, what advice do you have, especially for our Muslim brothers and sisters, concerning that's happening in Gaza and globally, with the genocide?
The first thing I think we need to get over, and it's going on for decades now, is bemoaning ourselves for the hypocrisy of the West. I look at social media chats, social functions, etc., and people are, see how hypocrite the United States. Oh, what about Israel doing this? What about, look at even Australia. They just, at the moment, only Israel has the right to defend itself. Iran would never have a nuclear weapon, etc. And we're doing this now for 50 and 60 and 80 years. We must get over that. Stop wasting time and energy ever thinking that these people are ever going to be on our side or ever do what is right and do what is just. We're not going to. So we should stop wasting time and energy on that. Divert the time and energy and money towards how we fight that, how we tackle that. And so Sumaya, it starts at, you ask, what can we do? The first thing is to start in our homes. I am amazed. I spoke to some young people this weekend and who didn't know the extent of the support. And these were people from the Tabligh Jamaat who are huge supporters of this K-Way brand that comes out of Cape Union Mart, whose owner, Kravitz, has won numerous awards from Israel for the amount of money he gives them and the support he gives them.
Yeah.
Was unaware that, that K-Way is such a big supporter of Israel. And this was a young man, mid-20s, who has a phone, who's into social media and all of this. So I think the first place to start has to be in our homes, has to be the change of conversations away from some of the soccer and motor racing. And I'm not saying you don't speak about that at all, but it has to be on our dinner table where we start to educate ourselves and speak about this. That's in the home. And clearly money and du'as are taken for granted. That those are step 1, 2, and 3 always.
Yeah.
The next step then, that's the home. Then it has to be conversations when you are going out, but up the level of conversation to what else we can. Then the third one, Sumaya, is boycotting. And we are clearly, as an Islamic Medical Association, which I also had, Tiva is an Israeli-owned medical company. Clover is an Israeli-owned dairy company. Cape Union Mart. Some will go to the extent of including Coke, some will say no Coke. But the others, there's no doubt about this scam. This scam is the CEO is an open, not just supporter of Zionism, but who belittles Muslims and Islam. Right? So those are easy ones. Zara. I still see lots of women, walking past in a shopping mall, Muslims, especially wearing hijab and niqab, entering Zara. And, so those are, at the moment, I'm sure people, hopefully people know, that Cape Union Mart is taking the Palestine Solidarity Committee to court over its boycott actions. If it wasn't hurting, why would they do this? They try to dismiss it, it's business as usual and we have our sale on and everything. If it wasn't hurting, why would they want to take you to court to stop it? Similarly, Israel spends billions and billions of dollars on marketing, on hiring people just to sit on social media and create their propaganda arm, Hezbollah. lies, deceit, etc. Because public relations and image and boycotts and divestment works, it hurts. We know it from our time in South Africa. It wasn't lumped mines planted in a few police stations that brought the nationalist government to its knees.
Yeah.
It was that BDS, the isolation, the sanctions, the divestment that made the Nats realize this is unsustainable.
Yeah.
We have to talk and find a peaceful solution. So boycott is the next one. The next one is money. And I'm not talking only about relief. I'm talking about all of the work. You know, one of the problems we have, Sumaya, is everyone that's involved in Palestine work virtually has 2 other day jobs, belong to another organization, does this part-time.
Yeah.
Designers don't do things part-time. They put in money together and they pay specialists, pay legal specialists, pay media specialists, pay journalists to do this work. And this is now where we're saying as SAMNET, etc., 5% of your charity spend must be given. At the moment, I'm not saying necessarily to SAMNET, but we want to only organizations doing it. But there's a limit to how much we can volunteer and how much we need to say, pay specialists to do this full time. Even it applies to Kashmir, you know, working for the Kashmiri cause. It has to be done full time by people paid to do that.
Exactly.
So that's the next one.
Yeah.
And those are not difficult to do.
Yeah. Dr. Faisal Suliman, so sorry to cut you off there, but inshallah, you know, we need to do a whole show on that Kashmir issue. Jazakallah once again for linking up and imparting your knowledge and your wisdom, because lots of people do not know about Cape Union Mart. They never knew what it was all about. But now you have given them clarity on that. Jazakallah once again for linking up this evening in Youth in Focus.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Shukran, Sumaya, for some very important questions you raised with Faisal. He's quite knowledgeable in the situation, and Faisal can go on in a lengthy interview. We had him here, and I think you realized that he probably could have taken the balance of the show, so you cut him off. But I think sort of some very, very important issues that he pointed out, and obviously you raised that before the interview. And I know you've got another appointment and you need to leave the studio, but I want to thank you for joining us in News in Focus and sharing this platform with me, especially sharing your vast knowledge on the Gazan situation. As the chairperson of United for Palestine, and you have your Secretary General that just joined us all the way. He's come from Cape Town, and he's going to wear his political hat and chat with us briefly on the local government service delivery summit that took place in a report back. But I'm going to give you 2 minutes just to give us your closing comments. I know you've got some advice you want to give to our listeners.
You know, well, you have the best guest in the house. We have our honorable brother Imran Subrati. We have our political analysis, Hassan Motala. And you know what? They're definitely going to impart the best knowledge. But my message just to the common man out there, you know, oppression is just not the act of harming others. It is also the silence in the face of injustice. Islam, as we discussed, Islam teaches us to stand with the oppressed, speak the truth for power, and never support zulum in any form. Simple English, that's about it. From me, Sumaya Khan. Jazakallah once again for having me in News in Focus. Assalamu alaikum.
Shukran, Sumaya, and you've really imparted some very important knowledge, shows the amount of information you've sought and the kind of action you and your committee has taken. We certainly will have you back soon in News in Focus to impart more. And we know we wanted to touch more about the Israel-Iran conflict and the various stories that are coming through. Is this a conflict of convenience? Faisal indicated that Israel were on the back foot, America was on the back foot, and they all have to be careful, particularly on the nuclear side. But we know you got to go and do your household chores still, and you sacrifice all the time.
A Muslim woman.
Yes. So go home and finish the rest. And inshallah, let me continue with News in Focus for the rest. I know there's one question came in. There's a message came through. Free Palestine. Sumaya Khan is mentioning, Sumaya, that she agrees with you, you know, free Palestine. So people are listening. So we thank you. That was Sumaya Khan. She's an educationist. She does a program called School Matters on Tuesday, but she's also an activist for Palestine and chairperson of United for Palestine. And we had an interesting discussion with her. I'd like to welcome the guests that are joining me in the studio now to talk about the financial impact on these global tensions and the local government service delivery summit. Firstly, Hassan Motala. Hassan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I'd like to welcome Honorary Imran Subrati, MP and Secretary General for United for Palestine. He holds various caps. He's been involved with Amal and various other organizations. He was last night or the last few days attending the local government service delivery summit. He had to fly back to Cape Town to attend some urgent meetings, and he took a 5 o'clock flight to be back in Durban to join me in the studio live. Before I engage with Imran, Hassan, I know you've got a lot to say. The global markets have been fluctuating big time in the last couple of weeks, and the rand has been fluctuating. And from a South African perspective, we've been watching the global situation very, very carefully. Perhaps you can just give us an insight. I know somewhere along the line, Ramaphosa condemns the infrastructure budget, where he's saying a lot of municipalities haven't spent the infrastructure budget, and that is a big problem. Gauteng Premier cracks down on corruption, 3 HODs fired. The ANC is now saying in their summit, no corruption, no nepotism. Mike Maburakula outlines the ANC's, local government situation and how they're looking at improving, and that's what Imran Subrati is going to talk about. National Treasury secures 26 billion World Bank loan in strategic move. And I know you were concerned with all these loans. How are we going to pay back? Hassan, go for it.
I think, Yunus, let's start off firstly from the global side in terms of, remember we had on that on Saturday night the bombings of the 3 nuclear power stations, or the 3 nuclear sites in Iran. One of the key issues and the key risks that came over the weekend was the concern that with the Americans we thought that the Americans were going to be now actively involved in the war, in a war with Iran, that one of the major commodities that would be impacted would be oil. And you saw over the weekend, oil shot up dramatically. And that Saturday, Sunday, and on Monday morning when it opened, oil was up, from around late $60, it was up to about $80 a barrel. So it had moved up quite substantially. Also, the rand had weakened a bit back to about 1810, 1820 over that period of time as well. But as things played out politically, things have sort of stabilized between Iran, Israel, and the US, where you had the retaliatory strikes on the US base in Qatar, and sort of effectively it was now it's known to be a sort of a ceasefire that's now been in place between these Israel and Iran. We've seen oil drop sharply over the last 48 hours. Oil is in fact now gone back to around the $67, $68 a barrel, and the rand has also strengthened a bit back to around 1770. So I think while we still may get a slight increase in oil fuel prices next week, so remember I think on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning next week, the sort of fuel prices will change. I think it's not as bad as what we may have thought it would have been had it stayed at what it was on Saturday and Sunday. So I think that's pretty. But look, we probably may get a 50 cents increase in terms of the petrol price, and maybe a 70 cents increase on the diesel price coming if the oil remains around the $68 a barrel, and if the rand remains under 18 rands to the US dollar. From a global economic perspective and the issues is, remember with the Russian and Ukrainian war, one of the key issues that emanated out of that was that inflation went out of control in the year or two after that. We can see it in South Africa, whether we were buying vegetables, whether we were bread, meat, anything, relative to what the prices were in 2021 and 2022, prices now are up substantially, particularly not only food costs, but across various, whether you're buying, deodorants, or you're buying, washing powder, anything, all across the board, across consumer products, inflation moved up substantially, post-COVID and post the Ukrainian and Russian war, because Ukraine and Russia in particular were big suppliers of food-related commodities such as wheat and maize and those products. Now with the war that's been taking place in Gaza and I wouldn't call it, it's a genocide that's taking place in Gaza, but also the emanating and expanding war in the region. We've had Lebanon, we've had Syria, and now more recently Iran actively involved. The concern was around the potential impacts that will have on the economy globally. The key commodity most people were worried about was oil and gas. Those are the key commodities. Qatar, remember, Iran, remember, big also reserves and resources of oil and gas. And any big issues in terms of those suppliers has a major impact. The other big issue was, there was concern. Remember the Strait of Hormuz is one of the big routes in terms of supply of oil through that strait. If Iran had to play one of their cards, which they could have used, but it would have hurt them as well because they also supply a lot of crude oil through that route. But close to 20 to 25% of all global crude oil flows through that strait. And if they decided that they want to shut it or close it or do something about it, oil would have spiked to $120 a barrel overnight, just like that. That would have had a massive impact in terms of inflationary impact on transport costs and other related impacts. Global markets would have been in financial, you would have had financial turmoil in global markets if we had seen that particular scenario. But fortunately, I think that scenario sort of seems to have eased off. And we are now in a scenario where at least I think oil prices, there's some stability expected unless there's another blow up that takes place between Iran and Israel and the US. But unlikely. You can see now that the language that's coming through from Trump in the last day or two is more around reconciliatory between those nations. But the unfortunate thing is, while this is taking place, our brothers in Gaza are continuously daily being slaughtered. And that's the unfortunate thing that is continuing because the eyes of the world has moved off of them and more focused on that. From a South African perspective, the key issues is, fortunately, inflation is relatively stable. And you've seen the Reserve Bank, in fact, the central bank, our central bank, a few weeks ago, the governor cut rates which was unexpected and which was positive and relief for consumers out there as well. I think also very importantly as well, we have seen some improvement in terms of the economic environment. I think some of the results that have been coming out from some of the companies reporting over the last few weeks has been decent set of results starting to come through. Whether some of the chemical and fertilizer companies, like a company like Omnia reported recently. I've seen some of the other industrial, some of the packaging companies and that. Relatively stable, decent results and showing signs of some improvement starting to come through, which is a positive sign. The areas which is still a challenge, and our brother Imran MP, also here, he'll obviously give some further feedback as well. But there is challenges that are still happening around certain of the sectors. I was very critical a few weeks ago around the wage agreement that was settled between Transnet and government. It's an impact. It has an impact in terms of the cost base. It has an impact in terms of the National Treasury's budget. But National Treasury is strained at the moment in terms of how the finance minister is really under pressure, but they haven't taken drastic steps in terms of cutting expenditure. And here, by increasing 6% fixed over the next 3 years, again puts a bit of strain in terms of our budget. What we have seen, though, is some positive news has come through around public sector. For example, Eskom has now come to an agreement with City Power to settle the 4 billion rands of 4 billion rands of certain debts. So 3.2 billion City Power is going to pay over the next 4 years, and Eskom will write off about 800 million in terms of penalties and related costs, but at least 3.2 billion now. There is a payment plan in place for City Power to pay Eskom so that the lights can be, sustained and kept on, especially in the major hub of Johannesburg as well. The other point to highlight, and is a point you noted, was the loan from the World Bank. It's a massive loan, and it comes with obviously terms. It's a 16-year loan that's been put in place for $1.5 billion, which is around 27 billion rands. It is a interest-linked loan, which is obviously is linked to what they call a secure overnight financing rate, but it's plus another 1.5% on top of that. So again, it is a dollar-based loan. For us, an important point is that the rand against the dollar to remain still stable over a period of time, because we will be making repayments on these loans in dollars over the next 16 years. But the focus of this loan, and that's the important point, and we hope that it is utilized properly by our government, that it is utilized towards the infrastructure spending which is meant to be allocated for. If it is utilized properly towards the infrastructure which is being highlighted for, it will have a positive impact in terms of whether it's the road and the rail related infrastructure, and that helps to unleash and allow the economy to flow and sort of gain some momentum. But we need to ensure that is managed properly and is spent properly. I'll give you an example. AXA CEO, she's got a massive budget in terms of her spending. And one of the key issues she's noted was the construction mafia. And she highlighted that she's being as secretive as possible in terms of managing the numbers and how she's working with different service providers and suppliers to try and reduce the impact of these, uncouth and sort of thuggers that's out there to try and basically gain sort of this unlawful activity as well. So I think there is a related impact in terms of some of the institutions wanting to manage that properly, but there has to be a lot more focus on it to ensure that these money is coming in. It's costing the country a lot of money because we have to repay that loan. We have to repay the interest on that loan. It has to be utilized effectively so that the economy can grow and the people of South Africa benefit, because it results in job creation and it results in revenue generation for the fiscus, and therefore helps us in terms of reducing our burden on taxpayers over a period of time.
Shukran, Hassan, as usual. I think you gave quite a good analysis of pre-post global tensions, exactly how the situation, how the rand fluctuates. Trump being a businessman, he knows how to maneuver the markets to make sure that it fluctuates. And we know with these tariff adjustments, he got the global markets shaking so that speculators can come in and out. I want to welcome Honorable Imran Surati, who came all the way from Cape Town to join us. Obviously, he has his office in Durban as well. Imran, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I know you're tired and you sort of don't want to spend too much time. But welcome to News in Focus, and shukran as usual for joining us.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yunus, it's always a pleasure to be here and to appraise your listeners of what's going on.
And, I mentioned to you that Mike Mabuya Kulu indicated no corruption, no nepotism. ANC's our local government rescue plan, and addressing the media on Tuesday, Mabuya Kulu said over 500 delegates from all 54 municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal attended the event, which is the summit, which acknowledged the urgent crises facing local government. And we've been chatting about this for many a week. The summit recognized that deep-seated political and administrative challenges have weakened the service delivery, undermined public trust, and delayed the advancement of communities, he said. Mabuya Kulu highlighted serious concern about mismanagement and corruption, citing a case in which a district municipality sold water tankers at an auction, later acquired by a local mayor who now supplies the same district. In that regard, this new supposed owner, is now supplier of water tankers to the same district. So there's a lot of corruption. Municipalities have been fraught with this. And then the president mentioned that, the infrastructure budget in many municipalities haven't been spent. And he says this is a criminal offense. I recall in our days in Etequeni municipality, we used to have meetings every Monday to ascertain what is our capex and what is the progress going forward, and are we going to spend our budget, because the people need upgrades and infrastructure upgrades throughout the city. So I know that there was a summit, and you were one of the attendees, and there were outcomes that took place as a result of the service delivery summit, because we're leading into local government elections. And I understand, that the leaders there, were cracking their whip very firmly on mayors, city managers, and participants that, listen, you guys need to catch a wake-up call. Otherwise, you're not in, you'll be out. Perhaps you can give us a summary of the outcomes, Imran, and how serious was the ANC about this summit leading up to local government elections?
No, thank you so much once again, Yunus. Yunus, as we know, in 2024, the African National Congress was penalized at a national government election for issues largely where we've struggled to perform at a local government level. Our performance of 40% at national government and was largely related to local government issues. And I think at the center of this entire thing is the African National Congress is always been a movement that is rooted in service of its people. And hence we've adopted the African National Congress is going through what we call a renewal process, a process of understanding the purpose of the organization, an organization that must be people-centric, focused on delivering and serving the people. This is what the organization was formed at that. And by its own admission, we've come to this realization that maybe we've lost track, and hence we've been through this process. Needless to say, as you and in your show have been alluding to for as long as I've been following your show, I incessantly talk about service delivery, and it should be, because service delivery is the face of government. What people experience on their front line, in their electricity, in their suburbs, is the face of government. This is the experience of government, whether government is performing or not performing. And that element and that aspect of national government, just so that your listeners understand, that connects with local and provincial government is COCTA, the Minister of COCTA, which stands for Cooperative Governments and Traditional Affairs. So COCTA is the national ministry that really oversees how municipalities and local councils run. Now, what we've realized, and we must not be naive to understand that ultimately the entire country is run based on a political basis. In other words, those parties that win the elections then have the opportunity of, in our case, in the government of national unity, we managed to negotiate for who the president would be, etc. Similarly, in different councils and municipalities, those who won the local government elections would have nominated their persons to run. And the African National Congress, since this last LGE, continues to have control over various and many municipalities. So inevitably, there is a political element that comes in. So part of what our resolutions was to really strengthen the political structures, firstly, within the ANC. And that necessarily means deploying and revisiting the leadership within our various structures around the province. Now, unlike other provinces that will have, for example, regional conferences, etc., we are not having regional conferences. So one of the things is we've appointed regional teams, RTTs, regional task teams, made up of people that are committed towards this renewal, that really want to make the ANC centric. I mean, Yunus, you run a huge radio station. You are as effective as the people that make up your radio station. So that was the first realization, that we need to strengthen the movement. They must not be voting for positions. There's no conferences. The leadership is now centralized. We will appoint people in the various regions that now must work with the councils, because it's a political relationship, and say that whoever our deployees are there, how can we work to serve the people? So that's the first thing we decided. We've appointed RTTs, and I think it's now public knowledge. On Tuesday, we attended a media briefing. There's now RTTs have been for all the regions in KwaZulu-Natal. So that was the first intervention, was strengthening the political structures at the ground. What were some of the resolutions that we took in terms of service delivery and local governance? Amongst them, the first one was restoring political and administrative stability within the various local governments, and to put an end, in other words, to put an end to the crisis of unstable councils and administrations. And the target we said is by August 2025, we want every municipality, whether led by the ANC, Yunus, or governed by a coalition, or if that council is in opposition, it should adopt concrete measures for stability. And what are the areas that we want to focus on? These will include filling critical vacancies, aligning integrated development plans, that is the IDPs, with our manifesto, and fostering harmonious labor relations. Now, one of the challenges we find, if you don't have critical vacancies filled, you're not going to be able, you can't get, someone who's not a presenter to come in and do presenting on your radio station. You need to have that critical, otherwise, unfortunately, no one's going to listen to your radio station if the presenter is not effective enough. So the same thing. So critical vacancies. So that is one, restoring political and administrative stability. The second resolution we made was strengthening financial management in the various councils. In other words, the summit resolved to reject and vehemently, we had all the mayors from all, Mayor Kaba was there, the mayor from Kwadokuza, all of them were there, because these are all ANC deployees in these various, wherever, there were over 500, as you mentioned, our PTT coordinator, Mike Mboyokulu, had mentioned. We had, alhamdulillah, it was really great, because it meant for me, it was very heartening, because I saw everybody coming together and say, guys, we've got to put our shoulders to the wheel. And it's not exclusive because the local government elections is coming. It's the right thing to do. We have to serve the people. If we don't serve the people, we will become extinct. So it was and you're quite right, it was a zero tolerance to nepotism, to everything else. It was really focused, and we called a spade a spade. So the second area was to strengthen financial management. The summit resolved to reject unfunded budgets, wasteful expenditure, and delays in paying service providers. Now there is an obligation on all service providers to be paid within 30 days. Now that, unfortunately, when there's cash flow challenges, that gets delayed. And where the problem arises, and I see this often, because when we have oversight at national level with various entities, we're encouraging black economic empowerment. We're encouraging small businesses to grow. Small businesses don't have the kind of cash flows that big businesses have. They don't have the type of access to finance that big businesses have. So when we give business to small businesses, to SMEs, it's very important as government that we pay them timelessly, so that their cash flow is able to run. So it has a knockdown effect if that is delayed. So we resolved to ensure that amongst the things, there's no delaying, and the African National Congress will intensify, its legislative oversight and enforce accountability and support struggling municipalities to adhere strictly to the 2024 procurement deadlines. And the focus in terms of strengthening financial will be in terms of prioritizing maintenance, repairing aging infrastructure, and rebuilding public trust. As Hassan pointed out, money that's earmarked for infrastructure, money that's earmarked, in our case in eThekwini, for going and fixing up all those pipes, maybe in Overport area, wherever they may, it must be used for that purpose. It must not be channeled for some other purpose. It must be used for the purpose that it was intended. It must be properly accounted for and managed. The third resolution we took, and this is again very important, a topic that we've all been talking about, is to accelerate service delivery. That we will prioritize the improvement of the provision of, and this was the order of the prioritization. We will prioritize the improved provision of water, sanitation, electricity, housing, and waste services in that order. We resolved that we will launch a provincial service delivery plan and convene a special water summit to improve the provision of water to our communities. We will partner in this summit. In it, we will partner with all strategic sectors, including traditional leaders, including labor, business, civil society, and communities to build a seamless and collaborative service delivery access across KwaZulu-Natal. And finally, with regards to local government, we resolved as well, this is also very important, is to promote local economic development. And that's crucially important because we all know we are seized with a country pandemic of unemployment. So we resolved in prioritizing the revitalization of economic hubs across the province. All municipalities must prioritize sustainable local economic development projects and partner with national and provincial departments to unlock jobs, to drive growth and foster economic recovery for the benefit. And there's one important point, and I think I mentioned this when we had the Minara evening, when I spoke that one of the challenges we have is what we call interoperability between national, provincial, and local government. And if there's no sufficient communication in interoperability, we are not talking to one another, what happens is inefficiencies creep in. There could be duplication. One person could be deciding to do a project, someone else is doing the similar project, and there's duplication, hence there's inefficiency. So one of the key things to get us working is to ensure there's proper interoperability. And the last point I want to share is and this is very important, and maybe this is homework for your listeners, is we resolved as an ANC, and again this is now open to everybody, is to review the white paper on local government. We and our allies and all our alliance partners were there, that we will be making submission on the review of the 1998 white paper on local government to deepen democratic local governance. We will advocate for a transformed, accountable, and fully funded local sphere that serves our communities, that restores trust and delivers on its constitutional mandate. Now, Yunus, this presents a unique opportunity. Firstly, I'm giving you this homework, Yunus, because I know you've been really going on about service delivery. Now, what is happening with the 1998 white paper? It provides an opportunity for us, every citizen in this country, to make a submission in terms of how do you think local government must be run. For example, if you feel that the mayors, there must be performance management, this is your opportunity to put comment into the white paper. Now, what happens to the white paper? The white paper, in fact, the deadline, I might closes, unfortunately, on the 30th of June. Now, it's not too late. Make an effort. I mean, if we feel that mayors there should be performance management, there should be consequence management, there must be proper contract management. For example, we like how we get a budget being approved. Maybe procurement plans must also be approved so that there's no underhandedness in terms of procurement. You know, there's a concept called fiscal dumping as well. When the budget is not used up in the last month, the 2 months, suddenly we go on a frenzy to just spend, but we don't do the proper follow the proper processes just so that you can utilize the budget. And another area, for example, that came up is often you'll find in local government elections, we could, as members of the community, could say, you know what, we want each political party to retain at least 50% of its old deployees, so that there is institutional memory that comes into the next local government. Because what happens now, if everybody's gone out, then suddenly every local government election comes in, you're rebuilding from scratch. So maybe you could have a proposal that, you know what, we want to have everyone must at least retain 50%. So finally, there's an opportunity for all of us to contribute into the white paper. And what happens with the white paper? Ultimately, we will process the input. There will be public participation. And by March 2026, I think the final white paper will be adopted. And then that translates into new laws, new regulations of how we can run a far more better enhanced local government.
Thank you, Imran, for giving us an outline on the outcomes. You're quite right that for the last 18 months, we've been harping on the subject. And the more we harp, the more we're getting reports coming in from ratepayer associations, from individuals living in various wards, that there was a decline or a drastic decline in service delivery. And the commitment that this summit made is to accelerate service delivery. It's a very important outcome. But obviously, they got to relook, and maybe in the white paper is the personnel that caused the failure. And I think our previous speaker, Faisal Suliman from SAMNET, mentioned that you could have a change on the political leadership, but the management and other employees in these various municipalities are still there. And if they've been underperforming and no action is being taken, their contracts are not reviewed, their performance are not monitored, there's continuous mismanagement and corruption, and then the very same guys are left to continue, the ratepayer associations are going to still have problems going forward, because to make the statement no corruption, no nepotism is a bold statement, but it has to be activated by dealing with the causes of all these things. So in the last discussion I had with some of the ratepayer associations, some of the proposals they've made, which I think they must, recommend in the white paper
Absolutely.
is they want municipalities, government to instruct municipalities to do away with racial appointments of employees. In other words, to say that, listen, your AA targets have been met, and now he's basically the best person for the job. Secondly, they need to review the BBEE, appointment of contractors, because a lot of these contractors have been underperforming. And we just read out an article where a mayor bought a whole lot of tankers, and he appointed himself to sort of provide those services at a phenomenal cost. And the third one is to review the contracts of management, city managers, and senior employees in the municipality who haven't delivered, and action be taken. Because if you don't attend to these issues, as you mentioned, you cannot have incompetent presenters coming in and working in the radio station and bringing the radio station into disrepute. This is what's happening in most municipalities, and these are some of the critical areas that our consumers and the public and ratepayers are pointing out, and many of them are saying that we're sick and tired, because the reason why service delivery is not taking place because you got incompetent officials. And a lot of the mayors have alluded to the fact that employees come in, they sign the register, they disappear for the day, they come back at 4:30, sign off, and they're busy negotiating contracts on their behalf, etc. So I trust and hope that the leadership of the ANC, who controls a lot of these municipalities, are going to push this agenda of really looking at improving performance of management, city managers, etc. Because recently there was a lot of hue and cry about the legal costs that we incurred by the city manager in defending a particular service provider's demand of a debt owed of 20 million, and 25 or 30 million was spent in legal costs, which the court declared that they will have to pay. So what we're saying is this is wasted in, expenditure that's irregular, and a lot of the auditor generals in a lot of municipalities have indicated this is a problem in a lot of municipalities. So I trust, Imran, that these are some of the critical issues were discussed at the summit and will be actioned seriously going forward.
Yeah, Yunus, let me state unequivocally that we have committed ourselves and we have unequivocally committed ourselves, because we understand, as I indicated to you, that local governance is service delivery, is the face of governance. And we have paid the price of it in the national elections, and we are acutely aware that if we do not improve, then there will be consequences. And we are very, very much aware of that. So I want to make that very clear. And that was the whole purpose of the summit, is to really, not as a Tekwini, but as a province, to say that everybody within our movement must understand the seriousness. So I think for me, a lot of the issues that you are raising, again, comes to what I started off by saying. There's a political connectivity. We need to address that. Let's get the stability there. Then we work with the councils and start addressing. So there is a plan in action. But I think what's crucially important, Yunus, and I think this is very important, and we all know that the president has also announced the national dialogue, and maybe on another show we can talk about that there. Now, what the national dialogue is for a country level is really for us to decide. For 30 years, we've been running the government, the country, the way we had for the last 30 years. Now the government is saying, the president is saying, and we are saying that we're going to have a national dialogue, a conversation about input into how do you think we should run this country for the next 30 years. That's what the national dialogue is all about. Now, it's a wonderful opportunity. Similarly, in terms of local government, the cocktail laws have been there for the last 30 years, and we've been using that. Everything that you've alluded to in terms of consequent management, contract management, staff retention and everything, all those things we've been using those regulations, and obviously there are gaps in those regulations, right? So now is the opportunity through the white paper to actually redefine and to define how we want to run local government. I mean, for example, Yunus, you could well go and say that, we believe that every ward should utilize the employees or service providers from their ward to do the ward's work of repairs, maintenance. You could make that suggestion. You in other words, you're saying we want to create employment for our wards. We want to create local economic development by making sure that the technical people come. Make the suggestion. This is an opportunity we have to define how local government must be run. Remember, for 30 years, we ran local government based on no prior experience. That was how the government was decided to run when we had the discussions prior to 1994. We'll have a central government, a national parliament, and then we'll have provincial parliaments, and then we'll decentralize it to local, so that we had 3 spheres of government as a national, provincial, and local. And then we gave independence to local government. We could say that, if a local government is not performing, etc., there must be some form of consequence management. We now, because we have this experience, have the opportunity to define. So why I'm saying this is that, and I'm really challenging and imploring you, Yunus, I want to see each and every ratepayer associations there to take us up on the challenge. You got 30th of June. It would take you an hour. Whatever you had mentioned, let's put pen to paper. Otherwise, we're just going to be sitting here. We have an opportunity to say, if we make effort, inshallah, we can redefine how local government is done for the next 30 years. So this is a wonderful opportunity we have.
Yes, I'm certain most ratepayer associations that are listening and have been in our programs will really submit, their recommendations before the 30th of June to ensure these changes are made to improve service delivery. Hassan, we're running out of time, and I want you to sum up for the next 2-3 minutes. You always mention that a large portion of the municipal budget, operating budget, is spent on employee costs, and there's a bloated bureaucracy, and this bloated bureaucracy is not delivering. And as we mentioned, what they expected to do, they're not doing, and the mayors have alluded to that fact. Perhaps you want to comment that, how do we really deal with this bloated bureaucracy? Because number one, we have maybe too many people doing the same job, but at the same time, there's no performance management criteria, and employees are not being monitored, and the right employees are not being appointed with the affirmative action policy. So what's your recommendations from a financial perspective, Hassan?
Sure. I think it was a week or 2 weeks back we chatted about from 2010 to 2024. When you've seen the municipal budgets and you've seen what the expenditure had done over the period of time, the largest rise in costs related to wages, and wages ended up taking a big chunk out of what the municipal budget was being used towards. And on the other hand, so there was actually there was an 89% increase in the wage bill over a period of 14 years. On the other hand, the infrastructure spend declined by 39% over the period of time. And if you take into account inflation and the like, the fact that there was such a substantial decline was essentially one of the key reasons why we're seeing across major cities, municipalities across the country that there are challenges. Joburg is a big challenge. Metros, including eThekwini, the Eastern Cape is a challenge. For example, look what has happened you've had the flooding that's taken place in the Eastern Cape. We had recently the Eastern Cape, parts of KwaZulu, Natal, and now, today there's a huge amount of rain and the like taking place in the Western Cape. The Eastern Cape itself, you've had 95 or 100 confirmed deaths that has taken place, but the damages are close to 5 billion rands worth of damage. That's a massive amount. And again, it's because you've had if the infrastructure was in a better condition, the impact in terms of lives and impact in terms of the damage and like, which will have been much less. Then you've had the NGOs that have had to step in and have had to pay a related impact. For example, the likes of the Gift of the Givers. They actually gone in and stepped in and playing a part in terms of supporting government and helping them doing supplying water and the like. But when they're going in, They're being, again, harassed by some of the water mafia in terms of doing what? Again, is all these issues that are in place that needs to be stamped out and addressed. And we're slowly, there is some progress. You saw a few days ago, I think a day or 2 days ago, 6 extortionists or the like were killed by the in a shootout by the SCPS in the Amtata Eastern Cape. Again, it's related to. So I think slowly there is some progress being made to try and address some of those issues, particularly the mafia and the like. But the bigger challenge that we need to address in the municipalities is effective and appropriate spending of the budget that is there. We need to spend it effectively. Less and less of irregular, unauthorized expenditure needs to take place. You need to have a lot less of that and more focus on that money being spent on infrastructure is the key word. And that's one of the reasons why national government has gone to the World Bank for that 1.5 billion loan, is to focus it on infrastructure. But the municipalities need to take responsibility and spend that money properly. And we as the public, the ratepayers associations and the like, have to continue monitoring, holding the institutions accountable, holding the what you call your councillors and the municipal managers and whoever it is, hold them accountable. And where they not be, you must take them to task. We have to continue putting the pressure so that we see the improvement happening, and it can happen. If you continue to put pressure, continue to make sure that everything is transparent, and you hold people accountable, then there will be change, and it will happen slowly. I mean, who would have thought? We here in South Africa, and we want to see and improve, and I think inshallah there will be, but. We talk about America, and you talk about their big challenge. They've got massive challenges issue. But yesterday, one of the Democratic primaries, a guy by the name of Zohran Mamdani, has become now he's the Democratic nominee for who would have thought, from a minority community up against the Zionist regimes and massive backers and funders in that particular state of New York, that you've got a person from the minority community won a Democratic primary, and he's now standing for a mayor, and he stands a reasonable chance. Obviously, still time will tell, but the fact that he's become the Democratic primary candidate tells you that things can happen, things can change, and I think here in SA we are slowly starting to see some improvement, some changes taking place, but it requires a lot more effort and a lot more focus by institutions, by government, and also the private sector and the public in general. And hopefully, I think inshallah, leading up towards the elections next year, we should hopefully see further improvements continue in that direction.
Thank you, Hassan. We've ran out of time. We're 20 minutes over our time, and we had quite a constructive discussion in News in Focus this evening. We chatted about the Iran-Israel Gaza analysis and updates. Sumaya Khan was present, and she interviewed Dr. Faisal Suliman, Chairperson of SAMNET. She gave us a good overview of what's happening out there and why we should be active. I know I could have asked Honorary Subrati to chat as a Secretary General, but time has run out, maybe on another occasion. He has a lot of information, being involved in United for Palestine, and also being involved in various protest marches. But we'd like to thank Imran for joining us this evening, coming tired from Cape Town after a hectic day. And he was telling us in one of the get-togethers we had in the weekend that, as a member of parliament, you spend approximately 18 hours a day doing, work, constituency work, and also coming back and doing work of local government and other issues here. It's a very tiring job, but for the last 12 months, Imran has been very dedicated. He learned a lot about what's going on by interacting with various politicians, being in the various portfolio committees. And we're proud to have a hardworking member of parliament like Imran in our midst. But the very important part about Imran, and I don't want to praise him because he's present here, is the fact that he never refuses to come and join us in the studio and be honest about the situation in government, notwithstanding, him belonging to the ruling party. And if they faulted, he's prepared to acknowledge it. And whenever he is approached to assist in any situation, he is ever willing to assist, no matter where he is and what situation we are in. He's proactive. And even with some of the pilgrims that were being apprehended and being harassed by the customs officials in the airport, Maulana Suliman Rawat and Maulana Vanka brought it to my attention that please attend to it. And we forwarded the complaints to Imran, and he got his counterparts to deal with the issue. I know how difficult these people can be. And, having spent, 4 to 6 weeks in Hajj, pilgrims are coming back tired, looking forward to meet with their families, buying a few necessities like, bringing in Zamzam water and a few abayas and some kurtas and some dates, worth a couple of thousand rand, and they're being harassed by these officials to declare and empty their bags. This is not called for, because people are not coming with hundreds and thousands of worth of gold when it's cost so much to go and do pilgrimage. And these customs officials have to be reasonable, but they're targeting our Muslims more to see if they can pick up a bribe of 1,000 or 2,000 rand. This is the order of the day. But Imran acted timelessly. We know in various other issues, whenever it was brought to his attention, he acted quickly and got assistance from wherever. So this is the kind of service we require from councillors and members of parliament. They don't just sit there and say, I'm an MP now, I must do nothing. It's really basically a classic example of always improving service delivery. And Imran gave us some very important points that came from the local government summit. Our ratepayer associations must submit their comments for the white paper, and the more comments come in, the more there will be a wake-up call. But do continue as ratepayer associations by putting pressure on local government, meeting with the mayor, meeting with departmental heads, pointing out issues like the various ratepayer associations. And I know Imran is a member of the ORA, Open Ratepayers Association, and so are others working very hard. We have to work hard towards the local government in the elections, identify leaders. We will continue with the monitoring process in this program, interviewing various ratepayer associations, politicians, covering topical issues in News in Focus, and I'm sure we will disseminate valuable information to our communities out there. I thank our guest for joining me this evening. Hassan Motala is always there to give us updates and look at the positive side of things and making sure that our sort of monies are well invested. There's tourism taking place, economic upliftment, etc. Faisal Suliman provided some very intense input on what's happening abroad, globally, not only in Gaza and other places, but also, in Kashmir and, where India, we have some issues with them as well. And I think Imran is an all-rounder and he can chat on any subject. And we hope we can get him in the studio in future to spend more time with us and give us an update on other issues. We enter in the month of Muharram, which is a few days away. It's a Mubarak month, and there will be special programs taking place because our media network focuses on, topical issues. So Muharram will be the flavor for the next 10 days. So there will be special programs taking place from the 1st of Muharram to the 10th of Muharram. These are Mubarak months. People are encouraged to fast. We have to make du'as for the Ummah because the Ummah is in Pareshan. We know the situation in other parts of the world and how serious the situation is in Palestine, the genocide. We have the solution to the problem by turning to the creator of all creations, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to work with our ulama, make du'as for those, whatever help we can render in the form of donating towards humanitarian relief, we must do that. But make du'as that relief reaches the recipients, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deal with the oppressors and the perpetrators. And in that regard, we should obey Allah's commandments as shown to us by Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, perform our 5 times salah, but also be aware of dealing with oppression and providing humanitarian aid to our people. In that regard, the Al Ansar Foundation is continuously involved in humanitarian aid of whatever form. In the month of Muharram, we will be providing hampers, we will be providing feeding, programs for our communities out there. Please free to liaise with us if you need to donate to any relief projects that we are involved with. Meet with our welfare and relief team that's here. So that no better time than the month of Muharram to really open up our hearts to provide humanitarian aid for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And locally, we have informal settlements, people living in abject poverty, and we have to be mindful of them as well. Until I presume next week, Wednesday, we're having special programs, so we might not have a News in Focus next Wednesday, but inshallah, a week thereafter, we'll have an in-depth program covering topical issues. Until then, once again, I thank you all. I thank our technician, Dawood Monley, for providing a wonderful technical service for us this evening. I know it's a cold night and a lot of people are falling off to sleep, but do get up for tahajjud and make lots of du'as for the ummah. It's needed so that lives of people improve throughout the world. Until we meet again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.